Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Ravana Chari Jamuna Ravana Chari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana 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 Jamuna Ravana Chari Jamuna Ravana Chari Ravana Chari Jamuna Ravana Chari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Mana Chari. Jamuna Tira Mana Chari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Shri Radhe. Jaya Nitya Sachinandana Gaurahari, Nitya Sachinandana Gaurahari. Jaya Nitya Sachinandana Gaurahari, Jaya Nitya Sachinandana Gaurahari. Jaya Panchatattva Jaya, Panchatattva Jaya, Panchatattva Jaya, Panchatattva Jaya, Panchatattva Jaya, Panchatattva Panchatattva Jaya, Panchatattva Jaya, Prabhupada 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 Jaya, Prabhupada. Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Nitai Gaura, Hare Bol, Nitai Gaura, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Nitai Gaura, Hare Bol. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paridhrajikacharya Stotar Satashi Shrimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. Ananta Gaura Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Namacharya Shila Haridas Thakur ki, Premzika Ho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advait Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki, Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Chamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhana ki, Vrindavan Dham ki, Mayapur Dham ki, Jagannath Puri Dham ki, Jamuna Maya ki, Ganga Maya ki, Tulsi Devi ki, Bhakti Devi ki, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki, Harinam Sankirtan Yoga ki, Brihat Madanga Transcendental Book Distribution ki, ISKCON Ireland ki, Gaur Premanande, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna, Namo Vishnupadaya, Krishna Style, Relation, Shrimani Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamani Namaste Saraswati Devi. Hare Krishna. Could I have my glasses over? Hare Krishna. Welcome to the Wednesday morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. We're continuing the story of Narada and his talks of Vyasadeva. So at this particular point, Narada is explaining to Vyasadeva how he became Narada as we know him, because we're at this particular point where he's one of the devotees who's he's a young boy, and he's met several of these great Parivrajikacharyas, and he's been given the insight on how to become a pure devotee. So I'll just start with the verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. A reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 6, text number 17. Premati para nirbhina pulakango tinirvita ananda samplave lino na pasyam ubayam mune. Prema, love. Atipara, excessive. Nirbhina, especially distinguished. Pulaka, feelings of happiness. Anga, different bodily parts. Atinivrita, being fully overwhelmed. Ananda, ecstasy. Samplave, in the ocean of. Lina, absorbed in. Na, not. Apasyam, could see. Ubayam, both. Mune, O Vyasadeva. And the translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. O Vyasadeva, at that time, being exceedingly overpowered by feelings of happiness, every part of my body became separately enlivened. Being absorbed in an ocean of ecstasy, I could not see both myself and the Lord. And the purport. Spiritual feelings of happiness and intense ecstasies have no mundane comparison. Therefore, it is very difficult to give expression to such feelings. We can just have a glimpse of such ecstasy in the words of Sri Narada Muni. Each and every part of the body or senses has its particular function. After seeing the Lord, all the senses became fully awakened to render service unto the Lord. Because in the liberated state, the senses are fully efficient in serving the Lord. As such, in that transcendental ecstasy, it so happened that the senses became separately enlivened to serve the Lord. This being so, Narada Muni lost himself in seeing both himself and the Lord simultaneously. Amagina Timirandasha Jana Jana Shalakaya Chakshuramin Tamne Tasmai Shikrane Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. And from my respectful obeisance unto him, Namo Vishnu Vidai Krishna Vistapatale Shimari Sansrut Daskas. Namo Vishnu Vidai Krishna Vistapatale Shimari Bhaktivedanta Swami Tirani. Namaste Saraswati Devi Uravakacharani. Nirvishesha Shilpi Fali Paschitana Deshatarani. Vanchikalpaturubhyascha Kripasinuvaracha Patitanam Pavaniko Vaishnavi. So I'll read the verse again. O Vyasadeva, at that time being exceedingly overpowered by feelings of happiness, every part of my body became separately enlivened. Being absorbed in an ocean of ecstasy, I could not see both myself and the Lord. So, one of the first things I would say here, of course, is that surprisingly, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada doesn't completely hammer the impersonalists, which is what he would do quite a lot of the time, given any chance. Because, it seems in one sense that this could be open to a little misinterpretation. Being absorbed in an ocean of ecstasy, I could not see both myself and the Lord. There's kind of a slight kind of move there towards because we were all one or something like that, Anyway, it's quite interesting to see that Srila Prabhupada doesn't take that one up at all, but he takes many more, so we shouldn't be worried about that. But yeah, it's very interesting because it's Narada is seeing, I could not see both myself and the Lord. So, in other words, it's him that's seeing. So he is personally seeing there. So we've nothing to worry about on that front. But yeah, it's very, very interesting how we've come to this point because we see that Narada, even before he was this boy, this one young boy of 5 years old and meeting the Parivrajakacharyas, he was one of the Gandharvas, and at a particular function, Narada started to praise the demigods even while Krishna was present, and we know that's the second offense in chanting, in a sense that to consider the names of the demigods to be equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu is an offense. So some of the devotees who were there didn't appreciate it. So what they did was they banished Narada. They cursed him to take birth as the son of a maidservant. Excuse me, just there's a little bit of noise here in the background. I have to close the door here. So I have to keep the door closed there because just back to that point. He was cursed to take birth as a boy, a son of a maidservant. So it doesn't seem to be a very auspicious birth, from suddenly being a Gandharva down to this lowly maidservant's son. And then these great sages came and they stayed there for the 4 months during the Chaturmasya, the rainy season. And that's also interesting because, even though the maidservant was serving the great sages, I mean, the 5-year-old boy was there. You would imagine that they wouldn't have taken notice of the 5-year-old boy because, they're in very highly lofty kind of topics. They're thinking about so many things and on a spiritual dimension. But the boy, normal 5-year-old boy would be thinking of playing and stuff like that. But the fact is that Narada was a very special person, and he obviously caught their attention. That who's this 5-year-old boy? He's listening intently to everything that we're talking about. what's happening here. We just happen to be here at this point, and we're speaking about these spiritual subject matters, and this 5-year-old boy is completely absorbed in it. So they must have been, completely, you could say, bowled over when they seen this. So that's why they gave him so much of their attention and their love, because they could see that this wasn't an ordinary person. And I just thought I would go through again some of the things that Narada had, what really made him different from a normal 5-year-old boy. And it's in the translations from the previous chapter. Although they were impartial by nature, those followers of the Vedantas, they blessed me with their causeless mercy. As far as I was concerned, I was self-controlled and had no attachment for sports, even though I was a boy. In addition, I was not naughty, and I did not speak more than required. Only once by their permission, I took the remnants of their food, and by so doing, all my sins were at once eradicated. So I just thought that was a very interesting part there, because Narada obviously had committed some offence as a Gandharva. But then by taking the remnants of these great Parivrajakacharyas, all his sins were at once eradicated. So we can see that the association of these devotees is so powerful, just by taking the remnants of their food and by hearing them and following what they said. So here we go again. Thus being engaged, I became purified in heart. So his heart became purified. And at that time, the very nature of the transcendentalist became attractive to me. So this is what we can see when we become in touch with some of these great devotees. And just a point I wanted to get in here at the beginning was that that was the second offence in chanting we talked about with Narada. But the first offence in chanting is to blaspheme the devotees who've dedicated their lives to the propagation of the holy names of the Lord. There is a whole section, I think it's Bhaktivinoda Thakur who says it, whereby he kind of reverses all those offences into a very positive note. I actually didn't get the time, or I didn't know where to look actually. I'm sure some of the great scholars out there might help me out with this one. There's a section where Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I think it is, who reverses all those things. And one of the first things he says, we should be looking to glorify the devotees of the Lord. It's like it's a very different way of looking at it. In one sense, instead of looking at it negatively, we should looking at it positively. And it said, actually, this is quite interesting, because it said that in order to set new patterns in our life, we should set different brain patterns. In other words, we might have been so used to committing offences in our life, or blaspheming devotees, we may have got used to it, or we come along at the beginning and we think everybody's fair game for our criticism, and we just develop that kind of tendency and that pattern. So we eventually find, oh, this is completely wrong, and then we try to get rid of it, and we can't really get rid of it in a sense, because it's so inground in there, and which I have to stop thinking like that. But when we're saying that, we're actually thinking like that. We reinforce the pattern. I have to stop being offensive, and but instead we put in a new pattern, which is say, I have to glorify the devotees. I have to glorify the devotees. I have to glorify the devotees. So if we develop that habit, then that will be much more of a positive way in approaching it. And there is one brilliant benefit of praising devotees. The benefit is that we'll actually take on the qualities that we're praising. Obviously, we have to do it genuinely. We can't just do it like as some sort of a barter, a deal, a bargain, although we'll come to that later. But no, it's we have to genuinely do it as well, obviously, from the heart. We have to see these devotees as servants of Krishna, and we have to glorify them. And it's often said we have to see. I remember Bhakti Shur Maharaj coming to Ireland back in the 80s, and this was a point he kept on highlighting. The be the bumblebee, not the fly. See the good quality. See the good. See the good. It was a kind of it was true that the whole, I think it was one week or 2 weeks he was there, but he completely kept on speaking that, and we know that he always says that, And so this glorification of the devotees is there's a byproduct from it, and that is that we actually get the good qualities that we're actually praising. It's like these great devotees, they're in the modes of goodness, and Shuddha beyond goodness. So we're associating with goodness. We're not associating with our lower modes, with the mind, or we're not a mind which is constantly looking for some reason to criticize somebody. Oh yeah, why? Because it puts ourselves a little bit higher. Oh yes, well, they're doing that, I'm not doing that. So that's the kind of the mood of the person. And funny, I was listening to a class by my good friend, our good friend Shamananda Prabhu in Radhadesh there last Sunday, and he said that's the Shamananda, he can get very dramatic because he's a wonderful actor. He says that's the problem. We want to see, we're always trying to think ourselves better than somebody else. We're always trying to think ourselves better than somebody else. So he said it with such conviction, I kind of fell back in my seat, and I got through that. That's one of the reasons. That's one of the ways in which we try to see ourselves better than somebody else, by criticizing, finding some fault in them, and. But yet, we heard from Sanatana Govinda Prabhu on Monday that that's one of the first things in the 9 qualities of bhava, and that is complete humility. It's not just humility, but complete humility, because in that frame of mind, we will see everyone else as better than us. That's how the pure devotee sees. But that's the pattern that we have to try to reach. So we have to put that into practice. We may not always succeed because of our mind, but you often notice when you're talking to some of these great devotees, they're always constantly thinking in that way, in that humble way. So getting back to the text there, that at once the sins were eradicated, Narada says. Thus being engaged, I became purified in heart, and at that time the very nature of the transcendentalist became attractive to me. O Vyasadeva, in that association, and by the mercy of those great Vedantists, I could hear them describe the attractive activities of Lord Krishna. And thus listening attentively, my taste for hearing of the personality of Godhead increased at every step. So intense desire to hear. That's another part of the bhava stage, is wanting to hear more about the pastimes of Krishna. O great sage, as soon as I got a taste of the personality of Godhead, my attention to hear of the Lord was unflinching. So taste, the ruchi. As we heard the other day, even at this very start, the very beginning stages of Shraddha, we can get the taste as well at that point. And that taste, Vishaya Vinivartate Narahara Shadeham Rasavarjam Rasopyasa Param Tishtavan Nivartate. We need that taste. We need that taste to get beyond the modes of nature. We absolutely need it. Because we'll cease the lower taste if we get the higher taste. So this is what Narada is explaining here. And as my taste developed, I could realize that it was only in my ignorance that I had accepted gross and subtle coverings, for both the Lord and I are transcendental. So there's Krishna consciousness in a nutshell, based on that verse. Just the gross and subtle coverings, my ignorance that I had accepted these as real, they left. They diminished. For both the Lord and I are transcendental. So the whole Bhagavad Gita, 1st, 2nd chapter, explaining about the soul being above, the modes of nature. Thus, during those 2 seasons, the rainy season and autumn, I had the opportunity to hear these great-souled sages constantly chant the unadulterated glories of the Lord. As the flow of my devotional service began, the coverings of the modes of passion and ignorance vanished. So by hearing intently, these modes, they diminish. And we've had an opportunity in the last few weeks not to be as active as we normally are, not to be, moved by every phone call, by every emergency, so-called. We've been able to sort of cut those things out of our lives and just spend our time hearing and chanting and chanting, and that gives us that taste for that, to get beyond the modes, and then we'll get some idea of what Narada is speaking about here. I was very much attached to those sages. I was gentle in behavior, and all my sins were eradicated in their service. That's the thing about the sins being eradicated again. In my heart, I had strong faith in them. Strong faith, not the beginning faith. We to the Shraddha, it comes and goes, but when we come to the Nishta stage, that faith becomes strong, And I had subjugated the senses, and I was strictly following them with body and mind. So serious, sincere, and strict. That strict is very important. There's that. Sometimes it's not a dichotomy, but it's sometimes one follows the rules and regulations really strictly and tends to be very pernickety about the rules and regulations, but then on the other opposite to that, one becomes quite lax about the rules and regulations and just kind of takes it as, just quite takes it in not a very serious way. So strictness is emphasized here. But again, we have to be strict with ourselves, but lenient to others. Lenient not in the sense that we just ignore everything that somebody's doing some nonsense, but lenient in the sense that we see it as for what it is. It's maybe it's a lesser quality, or not achieving the mark. Somebody who doesn't practice so seriously. It's not that. Sorry, could you ask them to keep quiet because I can't concentrate. Sorry, there's another conversation going on. So anyway, the idea is that we're strict with ourselves but lenient with others. Although it is said that the spiritual master can be quite strict. I remember. I suppose I shouldn't get into too much into personalities, but I will say I remember Bhaktitirtha Maharaj was saying this at one point about being strict with ourselves but lenient with others, but then I often noticed that a lot of the disciples he was very strict with, and we know Srila Prabhupada, he sometimes he would sort of cry. At one point towards the end, he apologized to his devotees. He said, "It was my duty. I had to be strict. I had to be harsh." But devotees were saying the Srila Prabhupada was 90% lenient. But that strictness is important, because we'll never ever make any advancement unless we actually take it seriously. But the modes of ignorance and passion are very much there to either take it easy or ignore the rules. So unless we're on the mode of goodness, then we have a different mentality. I'm speaking about this as an aspirant, because on a lot of the times that's not necessarily my how do you call it? The mode that it's the one I most aspire for, but it's not necessarily the one I most achieve. But the mentality that's there in the mode of goodness is different, and I hear about it, and sometimes I get glimpses of it as well. Then again, Narada says, by that confidential knowledge, I could understand clearly the influence of the energy of Lord Sri Krishna, the creator, maintainer, and annihilator of everything. By knowing that, one can return to him and personally meet him. So that's basically what's going to happen next, and that's where we come to the current verse. Narada, he actually is sitting down, and then it's in this incredible state of ecstasy. He's coming in touch with the Lord. So by the mantra that he got from the sages, he is actually starting to experience the Lord. The mantra, as we see, after that, under the shadow of a banyan tree in an uninhabited forest, I began to meditate upon the supersoul situated within, using my intelligence as I had learned from the liberated souls. So we can understand that he's chanting his mantra and he's starting to invoke and see the supersoul. And then the supersoul becomes actually there, present in front of him, and breaks through his mind and senses, and is actually there, present. He's actually in his mind. He's seeing the supersoul, and then his senses become so enlivened. Every part of his body becomes separately enlivened. So this is the descriptions of the feelings of ecstasy. that Narada is feeling. You notice I'm not going into vast elaborations on that, because that's a very high elevated stage. But that stage is there, and it has been explained to us, has been told to us. It's very important to see this, because in the previous verse we were talking about bhava, about the stages. And this is what this whole section of the Bhagavatam is telling us, that we must continue to practice our Krishna consciousness through all the stages. And where else would we get such a delineated scientific philosophy? I mean, this is probably, for me, one of the most philosophically scientific explanations anywhere. You can bring it out anywhere, the stages of bhakti, especially in the starting stages. A little faith, start to associate with devotees and practice some rules and regulations, and then the anarthas go. You know, it's such a scientific thing that anybody who puts it into practice can experience it. There is another major important part here, and that is enthusiasm, determination, and patience. Utsaha nisjaya tat karma pavartanat sangha tyaga satovite prasidati. I always get one of the words wrong, but this patience is so important, because we may not be getting the taste straight away. We may not be applying the philosophy straight away. We may make some mistake along the way and make a hames of things. That's normal. We're humans, you know. We make a hames of things as we go along. But don't worry. We just keep on keeping on. We don't. It's a resilience. We have to be resilient. We have to be able to bounce back. It's not how many times we fail, but how many times we bounce back. That's the real important point. And the quicker we bounce back, the better. You know. We have to bounce back as soon as possible. So don't dwell. You know, we're human. We make mistakes. But if we're strict, serious, and sincere, Krishna will look after us. Look at Narada made a mistake. Here's Narada. He's the great devotee Narada. He made this mistake. So this is why he's speaking at this point. But this whole section of the Bhagavatam is explaining to us how we have to keep on in our practice of Krishna consciousness. And it's showing us the stages that we reach. Nishta, Ruchi, you know, and then we get some bhava, you know, and then it ultimately becomes prema. So some of these stages are being described to us here. So thankfully we're getting a very clear picture, because once the goal is in mind, then we can start on the path. And we shouldn't lament. Like I always think about that. It's, you know, I mean, it's such a high stage we're trying to get to, you know, but just because we're on the path, though, we are going to get to that stage at some point. So we should be super enthusiastic. And the more enthusiastic we are, the quicker we will get there. And there's so many hints that is given in that text. Associate with devotees, glorify devotees, serve devotees, you know, serve the mission of the great devotees. We really don't have to worry about anything. The mind may worry, but we don't have to worry. We have to meet devotees, get an idea of our psychophysical propensities, and just get into it, carry on. We're all very important parts of Krishna's, Lord Chaitanya's army, and we shouldn't spend time lamenting our karma or something like that. Just get on with it. Krishna's not interested that it's some big service you're performing. Just if you do that service, I mentioned the other day, I saw a letter from my spiritual master in 1994, I think it was, and he was telling me, don't just, whatever service, if Krishna is pleased, just do it with sincerity. And that's what Krishna is interested in. So, but then do it amazingly. If you have some talent, use it in Krishna's service. If you have one talent, double it. If you have 5 talents, double it. 10 talents, double it. That's a message from the Bible. Whatever talents you've got there, just put them into practice to the best of your ability. And then, if we're glorifying the devotees, then if we see some other devotee who's doing better than us, you know, And what the natural tendency then, and from our past conditioning, I shouldn't dwell on it too much, is but we try to look unfavorably at that devotee. We see, oh well, they weren't doing this. Well, yeah, he's a nice devotee, but he's a great devotee. I know, I saw him, but you know what? I remember a time, it goes on and on and on. Just ignore those feelings, whatever. Just let them come and let them go again. Even the greatest devotees, we see this sometimes in the pure state that has happened, and this is the measure of the pure devotee. Actually, I was listening to the Krishna book readings yesterday, and it was in that amazing section from, I think it was 28 to 32, the gopis' separation from Krishna, and Krishna has removed himself from the gopis, and they're going almost mad. They're looking for where Krishna is, and then they see two sets of footprints, and they see there's another gopi there, and they start, this gopi must have, they started kind of exhibiting certain slight sight of envy, and this is where she must have done this, and she must have gone on her tippy toes, and Krishna tried to pick a flower, and he must have put it in her hair. Now there's only one set of footprints, and then eventually they see that the gopi is there. It's Radharani, and then they started feeling really bad for she must have suffered so much, Krishna. So that's the sign of the devotee, that he has total empathy for the other devotee, and that's what was Krishna Bharati Maharaj, and was making this point, and it was such a nice point, because we're coming from the material world, so we have these kind of feelings towards somebody else which we see who's doing better than us, but just get over it and try to then go to the other side and see the great qualities of the devotee, and then you'll get there. We'll start to see those qualities in a very nice light. I was thinking about sorry, I just want to see get what time it is. It's very interesting here, because this particular absorption is such a high thing that I thought we'd also have a look at another section in the Bhagavatam, and that's the section which is a very similar section, because we have the great Dhruva Maharaj, who's also a little boy, 6 years old, 4 years old, 6 years, I can't remember, 5 years old, very, very young boy, and he also goes to the forest and starts to meditate, and then Krishna actually appears. Of course, we know the story of Dhruva Maharaj. He wanted to get on the knee of his dad, because it's not just his dad. It's King Uttanapad, who's the son of Swayambhuva Manu, who's the son of Lord Brahma. So it's a huge lineage here. We're talking about the whole, universe. So he's destined to have a great life in that sense. He's one of the great kings, King Dhruva. But because of as we go back to an incident the other day, because of a major incident in his life, he wasn't allowed to sit on his dad's lap. Suddenly he became completely embroiled in this anger, and he couldn't understand it. His frustration, why was he being stopped? His Surichi, his stepmother, said, "No, unless you come through my womb, then you're not allowed to sit on the knee of your father," because she was the favorite queen, and so her son was going to be the next king. And again, if we go back to the Ramayana, we see that these stories kind of keep propping up, isn't it? So these are great dynasties. So we shouldn't be so bad that we have some of these negative qualities ourselves, but we see some of these things which are there in the human race, or in the race of in this universal day of Lord Brahma, and this is the material world, Dukkhalayam Shashvatam. So we shouldn't be looking for any permanent situation here. So therefore, he went to his mother, asked what she should do, and she was completely bereft. She was so feeling great feelings of remorse, because she couldn't help. She wasn't the favorite mother, so she thought that well maybe maybe if you perform these activities by going to the forest and approaching the Supreme, only Krishna can help, only Krishna can help, only Krishna can help. So he then went to the forest, and of course it was spotted by who else but the sage Narada. And Narada spotted the boy and said, "Oh, don't worry, listen, what's wrong?" He found out what was wrong, he knew what was wrong, and he gave him this wonderful advice just to be even-minded amidst happiness and distress. But of course Dhruva said, "Unfortunately, your instructions don't fit in my heart. I've been mortally wounded here. I cannot." And of course, then he asked for the boon greater than his dad, than he had, greater even than his grandfather. And so Narada was actually testing him, and then he saw his resolve. But then what happened again? Just like the sages gave the mantra to Narada, and he sat down and he saw the Supreme, so Narada gave the great mantra to Dhruva. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Dhruva went then to the forest and started to meditate for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. And the 6th month, the whole universe was suffocating because of the intensity of his vow, of his meditation. So I thought I'd read some of the activities that were going on at that time. So Narada, this is the part where Narada, this is before this happens, he starts his meditation. Narada gives him a preview of what to expect. And I just wanted to read this out, because this is what Narada himself was thinking of. They're meditating on Krishna. And we're told about how it's so important to meditate on Krishna. And we know in Govinda Dweep there, we have Krishna on the altar, and there's the Pancharatrika system is so much pronounced by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, the great preacher, great preacher, but he wanted the 2 lines, the Pancharatrika and the Bhagavat processes going hand in hand. So this is Narada, and he speaks about the Lord. He tells him what to do. After sitting on your seat, practice the 3 kinds of breathing. Completely free yourself from all material contamination, and with great patience begin to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The form of the Lord is described herein. The Lord's face is perpetually very beautiful and pleasing in attitude. To the devotees who see him, he appears never to be displeased, and he is always prepared to award benedictions to them. His eyes, his nicely decorated eyebrows, his raised nose, and his broad forehead are all very beautiful. He is more beautiful than all the demigods. Narada continued. The Lord's form is always youthful. Every limb and every part of his body is properly formed, free from defect. His eyes and lips are pinkish like the rising sun. He is always prepared to give shelter to the surrendered soul, and anyone so fortunate as to look upon him feels all satisfaction. The Lord is always worthy to be the master of the surrendered soul, for he is the ocean of mercy. The Lord is further described as having the mark of Srivatsa, or the sitting place of the goddess of fortune, and his bodily hue is deep bluish. The Lord is a person. He wears a garland of flowers, and he is eternally manifest with 4 hands, which hold, beginning from the lower left hand, a conch shell, a wheel, a club, and a lotus flower. The entire body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is decorated. He wears a valuable jeweled helmet, necklaces and bracelets. His neck is adorned with the Kaustubha jewel, and he is dressed in yellow silk garments. The Lord is decorated with small golden bells around his waist, and his lotus feet are decorated with ankle bells. All his bodily features are very attractive and pleasing to the eyes. He is always peaceful, calm, and quiet, and very pleasing to the eyes and to the mind. The Lord is always smiling, and the devotee should constantly see the Lord in this form, as he looks very mercifully towards the devotee. In this way, the meditator should look toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the bestower of all benedictions. So then what happens is that Dhruva goes and meditates in the forest, and then the whole universe has been stopped breathing because of the intent, serious, strict, and sincere. This is just incredible following of the spiritual master's order by Dhruva, and although in one sense it can be a kind of a paradox, still we see that he fully surrendered unto Narada in the way that he was able, and Narada accepted him in that way. And so he starts, the form of the Lord, which was brilliant like lightning, and which Dhruva Maharaj, in his mature yogic process, was fully absorbed in meditation, all of a sudden disappeared. So we'll notice in the verse tomorrow, I won't spoil it, but anyway, in this particular meditation of Dhruva, the Lord disappeared. Thus Dhruva was perturbed, and his meditation broke. But as soon as he opened his eyes, he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead personally present, just as he had been seeing the Lord in his heart. So suddenly his meditation broke, and then he sees the Lord. When Dhruva Maharaj saw the Lord just in front of him, he was greatly agitated and offered him obeisances and respect. He fell flat before him like a rod and became absorbed in love of Godhead. Dhruva Maharaj, in ecstasy, looked upon the Lord as if he was drinking the Lord with his eyes, kissing the lotus feet of the Lord with his mouth, and embracing the Lord with his arms. Although Dhruva Maharaj was a small boy, he wanted to offer prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in suitable language. But because he was inexperienced, he could not adjust himself immediately. So we see that similar to Narada, his senses become completely absorbed in the Lord. Completely, we know that verse in the Brahma Samhita where Krishna's senses can do with anything else, can perform the activities of any of the senses. I won't say the Sanskrit there because I could sing it better than I can say it, that particular verse. But we say it every morning before we take Charanamrita in the Govindam prayers. So this completely incredible ecstatic state is also here again described in the fourth canto. So it's in the first canto, it's in the fourth canto. And it is throughout the Bhagavatam when the Krishna appears. Maharaj Priyavrata that's going to come up. I didn't get time really to study that, and I thought I wouldn't actually have time to describe it. But Maharaj Priyavrata, again, the Lord appears on the shoulders of Garuda, and immediately the ecstatic symptoms appear again. So these are the different stages of bhakti. And we saw yesterday in the bhava stage, tears just automatically came to the eyes. The taste was there, the feelings of bhava, and the different stages of bhava was explained as well. So here we have the Dhruva wants to speak, but he can't speak. But then the Supreme Personality of Godhead, situated in everyone's heart, could understand Dhruva Maharaj's awkward position. Out of his causeless mercy, he touched the conch shell to the forehead of Dhruva Maharaj, who stood before him with folded hands, and then Dhruva Maharaj started to speak. At that time, Dhruva Maharaj became perfectly aware of the Vedic conclusion. So by the touching of the conch shell to Dhruva's forehead, suddenly he became aware of all the conclusion of the Vedic scriptures. And his relation, in accordance with the line of devotional services of the Supreme Lord, whose fame is widespread, Dhruva, who in the future would receive a planet who would never be annihilated, even during the time of dissolution, offered his deliberate and conclusive prayers. So then Dhruva starts to praise Krishna in incredible, all the prayers of Dhruva is there. And he becomes disappointed, we know later, but that's another story. Anyway, just to briefly say, he became disappointed because he had asked for something mundane and Krishna came and gave it to him. But then when he got it, Dhruva realized that that's not what he wanted. He just wanted the association of Krishna. So Prahlad, not Prahlad, but Narada in this other situation, he got Krishna's presence, and at the end of his life, he went straight to become Narada. And we know then that Narada then became very, very dear, or is very, very dear to Krishna. Just to bring another parallel in, Narada was cursed as a Gandharva to become the small boy, or I always say the wee boy, the 5-year-old boy who met the Paramahamsas. So in the same way, Narada, he cursed Nalakavar and Manigriva to become trees in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj. And but of course, all of these curses are all blessings. And then when Krishna pulled, like a baby, pulled the mortar through the two trees, the 2 trees fell out and the 2 demigods appeared. And Krishna said to them that he normally wouldn't speak to them, but because of the great sage Narada, he was going to, they could see him. And then of course their tears came from their eyes, and they didn't want to go, but they knew that they went, and they had to go because they couldn't. There was just incongruous in that particular setting. All the cowherd boys would have lost their feelings of love for Krishna, and they were wondering who are these demigods here, and so they left, and but Krishna said that I'm only talking to you because of my great sage of Narada, because Narada could get my association all the time, but because he's so in love with the and so merciful and compassionate to the fallen souls, he's always going through the universe trying to bring people back to him, back to me. So he's more merciful, So Krishna is so devoted to Narada that it also reminds you of the of Krishna in the just because I heard this for the past time yesterday in Parayam. Krishna says there's no way I can repay the gopis their love for them, because he's totally indebted. So in this way, this is how the devotee ties up his love with Krishna. All these high feelings are there, they're in our philosophy. So even we might even get some glimpses of them from time to time, or even when we read about them and we get some idea that they're there, even if it's only when we're hearing about them. That's also the heart is completely purified, and that's what the Parivrajikacharyas, that's what they recommended to Narada, and that's what's been recommended to us, to spend all our time 24 hours a day. That's what Prabhupada would often say. And and I just will end because, and then time is up. That I just thought I'd end with Srila Prabhupada's, of course, his great meeting with his spiritual master, with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, because it was another meeting. Although you could say that Krishna didn't seem to be present in the same way as Krishna was present for Narada and Dhruva, but Srila Prabhupada had been, he had been told by his friend Narendranath Mullik to come and see this great sadhu, and Prabhupada had a lot of experience of sadhus because his dad was so liberal that he used to invite all the sadhus in, and didn't matter if they were smoking ganja. He even had a little stash for them, apparently, when they came in. Not that he took anything himself, he was a completely pure devotee, but he only wanted them to give the blessings to his son, that he would become a pure devotee of Radharani. That's all he wanted. So everybody who came, that's all he wanted. He wanted them to give those blessings. So he invited everybody in, but the young boy, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Abhay Charanaravinda, he didn't, he saw all the sadhus, but then he'd see them going out maybe afterwards, and they'd be on the street and they'd be begging, and then they'd pack up their stuff and they'd go home. he wasn't so impressed, basically. So when his friend was saying that he wanted him to come and take the association of this great sadhu, he wasn't into it. In fact, the description is there. He was trying to pull him. His friend was trying to pull him to see this great saint. And eventually he said, "Okay, I'll come." So when he went to the top floor in Ultadunga, he went over to pay obeisances. He was just paying obeisance to the sadhu because that's the normal thing to do. But just while he was just touching the ground, Bhaktisiddhanta says, "You should preach this, young educated people like yourself, you should preach this message of Lord Chaitanya in the English-speaking world." And immediately he was hit, like a thunderbolt by this great sage. Who's this sage who's saying this? And Srila Prabhupada was considered to be a leader among his friends, so that's why Narendranath wanted to bring him to see Bhaktisiddhanta, just to see what he thought, because if Abai agreed on something, then all the other group would have been in agreement. And so Abai was at the time, he was one of of Gandhi's followers, so he was very much into the nationalism at the time. So that was the question he had with Bhaktisiddhanta. But who will ever hear us? Why would we go to the English-speaking countries? Who will hear us? We're a subjugated country. We're under the thumb of a greater power. And Bhaktisiddhanta just completely dismissed the objection. This is insignificant. There's no time for this. We can't wait for that to happen. We must spread this message. And Abai felt, I think there's in some sections it says that for the first time he completely was defeated by his spiritual man, by this person, and then he had a complete conversion, So we can see that this was a powerful experience for Srila Prabhupada, from being just going a normal day in the Calcutta street. Can you imagine Calcutta, like 15 million people, the hustle and bustle, and going to this little, place, going upstairs to the 4th floor, and then suddenly the spiritual master speaks like this, and suddenly everything changes in his life. His whole life has changed forever. So this is the kind of power that these Parivrajakacharyas have, but also this is the power of the spiritual master. Yasya Deva Parabhaktir Yata Deva Prakashante Tatasayate Katitara Yata Prakashante Mahatmanha. Only to one who has faith in the spiritual master and the Vedic scriptures, or into Krishna and the spiritual and the Vedic scriptures, and the spiritual master, all the imports of the Vedic scriptures are automatically revealed. So this importance of praising the great devotees and praising Krishna, which is what the great devotees tell us to do, to become absorbed in this prayer, all these prayers, to 100% study the Bhagavatam, to become absorbed in hearing the Bhagavatam, hearing all the great books, hearing all the great devotees. This is the way in which we can become absorbed. And Srila Prabhupada, as we can see, this was so powerful that the whole parampara kind of took birth at that point and spread out all over the world. So it is basically the mantra that's concluded as whereas Narada got his mantra, Dhruva got his mantra, so Srila Prabhupada has given this mantra. We know what Srila Prabhupada has said about this mantra. We don't have to go very far just to see Prabhupada is telling us to chant 24 hours a day. We have to become expert at chanting this mantra, and by chanting this mantra, we'll also give it to others. So all the different activities we may perform, we may be preaching. That's also chanting. Prabhupada one time explained that when they were talking about preaching to Tamal Krishna, he also said, this is also chanting. So we've often noticed, it's something I've often found sometimes we do some service and we feel very enlivened from it, because that service is also chanting. And then that will feed into our chanting. That will also feed into our chanting. One example, I remember one time we had the open day on Innisrath, and basically it was the first open day for a long while, and we didn't know how many people would come. We didn't know whether it would be 20 or 30, but we had prepared for a lot more. And I remember the feeling when I saw the first group of people starting to come over on the ferry. First there was 50, then it was another 50, then another 100, then, and the feeling was unbelievable. To see all these people, coming and taking shelter of the of Radha Govinda and taking prasadam, and Katyani doing the cooking demonstrations. We had the different ministers from the government there. The Minister for Agriculture was there. I saw him on the lounge, or on the lawn there, sitting on one of the seats, and after being at the cooking class, taking some prasadam and speaking to his friends, just completely relaxed. It was one of the most, it was very enlivening. So if one gives out books, all of these things, they feed into one another, so it's the whole package. The chanting, we become experts at the chanting, and therefore we become expert at serving the devotees and performing spiritual activities. So Prabhupada's mantra is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, I just wanted to... So, okay, great stuff. If there's anybody wants to ask any comments, any questions, I've got that here in front of me. Thank you very much for hearing and for listening, and for going through. It's funny, I'm looking at the questions here, but I'm a little bit behind on this phone than I am on this phone. Okay, so I don't think there's anything so far. Anyway, I probably kept it. So Dina Dayal Prabhu, he says that some picked up some nice points by glorifying the devotees. We pick up their qualities. No need to spend time worrying about our karma. Yeah, thanks, David. Yeah, they're two really two major things. I've been hearing that quite a lot of late, praising the devotees, and then you just get into the whole mood, and every devotee is special. Every devotee is special, and you become absorbed in it. Every devotee has their story, and then you become amazed at how Krishna is in the heart of the devotees and is bringing them back to the spiritual world. And no need to spend time worrying about our karma, because it's not going to do it. It's just not going to work. And that's satisfaction. That's one of the things that we should develop. I know it's in the Bhagavad Gita. There's that verse which talks about developing satisfaction. Tulsi Priya Prabhu talks about it all the time. We just have to develop that satisfaction, and then we won't be hankering to be something which we're not, or we won't be envious of somebody else. And then Krishna will be there with us, and we'll be absorbed just in Krishna, and then we'll see Krishna with everybody else, and we'll just be glorified, and we'll all fit in very well. The whole association of devotees becomes, and we'll see it, it becomes very, very nourishing. And then because it's our, we're very humble. That's the one thing that was spoken about in the class yesterday, or on Monday, was the humility is there, intense humility, because we see Krishna with everybody else, and we see how fallen we actually are, and how amazing, how we're totally dependent on Krishna picking us up. It's amazing how Krishna touches Dhruva with the conch shell. He makes a, he comes across, and also in the Chatur Shloki verses, Krishna shakes Brahma's hand. It's quite incredible. Krishna he comes across and actually is the person there, So we're so dependent on Krishna bringing us up. So thanks for that, Dina. And then Supriya Radha says, thank you again for another class, Prabhu. It's very encouraging for us to hear that if we're having difficulties in our spiritual life, just to keep on going. It shows the beauty of Krishna consciousness in that unlike other cultures and religious, we don't preach eternal damnation. There is so much encouragement for those starting their journey, as well as those who are further along but might be stuck. That you just have to keep going. Thank you, Prabhu. On another note, let's have another open day. Whoa, definitely. That's the. Hopefully that might happen. Yes, we have to make it happen. Yeah, it was so nice to see. And funny that fits into a point that Pavani was saying as well previously, is that we have to kind of reach out to different people as well to come to Krishna consciousness, because they're not necessarily going to hit there straight on at the start, but if they see something that they see the devotees and they see something that they like about devotees, they will become attracted to devotees. I remember actually another one of those meetings. On one side there was the unionist councillor, I think his name was Derek Nixon at the time, and then there was Paddy, I forget his second name now, Paddy McCafferty I think it was, on the other side, and they were both there, and they were both totally enlivened, and they were chatting and talking and whatever. Of course, I think they do that behind the scenes anyway, but it was just nice that they were both there, and they were kind of supporting the situation, and they could see, over 1,000, 1,500 people, could see the benefit in devotees, It was magic, and but yeah, about that point about us continuing, it's just what we do. We're fallen and we make mistakes, but we should just keep going. And it's something we have to be careful of. Is I'm finding a little bit as well, is that as we become more expert, sometimes people feel they kind of have to aspire, I think, to a situation that they may not be able to get to straight away. So as we go on, we should become very expert in our society, how everybody fits in. I mean, Krishna talks about how everybody fits in the 12th chapter, of the Bhagavad Gita, and we have to become visionary to see how that happens, how everybody helps. That will be the expert understanding. It's not that everybody has to do the same thing, but if everybody is satisfied, then nobody feels any need, any want. They're just satisfied in their situation, because ultimately Krishna is the supreme, and if Krishna is being praised, then everybody's happy, and we're all praising Krishna, and Krishna is the center. So as we go on practicing our spiritual life, we'll become forgiving. Even if it appears that somebody else doesn't have that in mind, then we dig deep and find out that philosophy of forgiveness, and then again we won't see that person in that light, and then that person can gain from that energy, because sometimes if we point out something, that person becomes defensive and then gets back into that pattern and keeps coming back at us. I'm amazed sometimes when I see the way devotees react when sometimes they're put under pressure, or somebody talks negatively to them. That to me, just to be straight, to be very candid here, I'm coming from a background whereby, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. If somebody does something to you, you get back in there, and tell them what's what, That's just the background. It's almost like second nature, and it's a curse. It's an absolute curse. And I try to deal with it in different ways, and Sometimes I succeed, a lot of times I don't. And even my attempts at trying to succeed are painfully belabored, you know. It's not natural. But when I see other devotees, I saw a devotee in a class yesterday after the class on Prabhupada's class. I turned on to Bhaktivedanta Manor, and there was a devotee there who was asked this question. A devotee was asking him the question, was almost giving a class himself. Anyone never get that one? You know, I was like, just let him answer the question. Let him answer. Stop. And the chap was going on. And then the devotee was so unperturbed and answered brilliantly. I didn't collapse on the ground, but I just thought, wow, I wish I could be like that, you know. And it's just that's the beauty of being in the association of devotees, is that you're able to get that incredible energy. Okay, Prabhus, thank you very much for your association and for those really nice comments, because it makes me understand that how great the devotees are, and how privileged I am to be in your association. So keep it up, keep me propped up, and Srila Prabhupada ki. Oh, wait a minute, sorry.
Did you answer Supre's?
Yeah.
Did you answer Madhava Krishna's?
Oh, actually, sorry, one from Madhava Krishna. I know it's a bit late, so anyone can turn out, but I just want...
Comment and question from Satya.
Krishna.
Thank you very much for bringing the point on how to stop criticizing other devotees. My question was how to become free of criticism to glorify other devotees. You answered it already, thank you. Yeah, that's it. Just glorify devotees, become free of the criticism. Or it certainly helps anyway. Yeah. Is that everything? Mm-hmm. Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna.